So the whole sci-fi kind of abstract orb thing has been really popular on my channel. So a few days ago, if you guys haven't already seen it, I did a complete tutorial, 2 parts, on how to make this animated sci-fi orb. But in this tutorial, we're going to be doing kind of like a still life render of this sci-fi environment that you see here. And this is going to be part 1, where I'm going to be taking you through the whole modeling process, setting up the camera, getting it all ready, adding these cables and things. And then in part 2, we're going to be doing the lighting, the materials, and the rendering, and also setting up some volumetric stuff. So if you think this is something you want to learn, keep watching. This is part 1, like I said, and then there'll be part 2. And as always, I make these files available on my Patreon, which you can also check in the description. So I hope this is another fun one. So yeah, let's get started with it. Okay, so now we're pretty much able to get started. So I've got Blender 2.93 Alpha open up here. At the moment, that's still the build that I'm using. So I'm going to select all of the default objects, hit X and delete. By the way, I sometimes hit X and delete, but if you just hit delete as well, kind of does the same thing. But anyway, I digress. So let's start by going Shift A, and we're going to go to our mesh options, and we're going to add in, whoops, here you go, a UV sphere, all right? And we're going to leave the UV sphere settings just as they are, right? Currently it's set to 32 segments and 16 rings, and it's 1 meter radius by default, which is fine for this kind of thing we're doing. So we're going to go into our right orthographic view by hitting 3 on a number pad. So you can see up here, we're now in the right orthographic view. And we're going to tab into edit mode. And with all of this geometry selected, it should be, we're going to go R90 and hit enter. And it should rotate 90 degrees on the X. Now, if you're not on your right orthographic, I'll just quickly mention, if I did R90 like this, for example, it won't rotate around the axis. It'll use the view of the camera. So if you're in a different view, just go RX90 and hit enter. Essentially, we just want this rotated 90 degrees on the X axis. Then going to come in here and select the vertex at the front. So if you're in your front view, this should be the front vertex. We don't want to accidentally select the one at the back. And with that vertex active, we're going to go Control plus or Command plus to grow our selection. And I'm going to keep doing that till I get to a selection size like this. If you were to count, you can see we have 1, 2, 3 ring segments going in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go E and just extrude it to about here. And then we're going to go E to extrude and S to scale. And we're going to go to about here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. And then we're going to go E and we're going to extrude it inwards. And we're going to go to about there, that much in. And then we're going to go E to extrude, S to scale, only a little bit. And then we're going to go S, Y, 0, and we're going to flatten those like so. And then while we still have all of that active, we're going to go E to extrude. And we're going to extrude it out to about here. About that much should be fine. And then we're going to go E to extrude, S to scale, in like this. And then E to extrude all the way in, all the way to the back like that. And if you hit Z and you go to wireframe, you can see how much you're in. So just that much, almost all the way to the back should be fine. We don't have to connect it or anything there, just back there should be perfect. Now we're going to tab out of edit mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our modifiers. We're going to go to add modifier, and we're going to give it a bevel modifier. And by default, the limit method should be set to angle, and the angle should be set to 30. So essentially, instead of adding a bevel to everything, it's just going to give it to these nice, sharp 90-degree corners. And all we have to do here is grab this amount and just bring it down gradually. And I'm holding in shift while I do that to give me some more control. And now we've got these nice bevels. And once we're happy, we can increase the segment count. Then go to the object mode and enable shade smooth. And now let's go and add a subdivision surface modifier on top of that. And now you can see we have this. That's pretty cool. And it's looking nice and smooth and doesn't have really sharp, ugly edges. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go to front view. We're going to go G, Z, holding control and move it up till it snaps to the grid floor. So moving it up. Doesn't have to be too precise about that, but this is the actual orb part of it. That's the modeling involved. It's super simple. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go Shift A. We're going to add in a plane. And once we've added in that plane, we're going to go S and we're going to scale it up about that much, maybe a little bit smaller. You can look at the grid spacing here, the grid size, to kind of get a rough idea of what I'm doing. But at the moment, I just scale it up about 6 times. So nothing too big, nothing too small. And we're also going to go S, Y, and we're going to scale it along the Y about that much. At the moment, it's about 17 meters on the Y axis. We're then going to go G, Y, and we're going to move the whole thing back till it's sitting about here. We want the majority of it to go towards the back, but we still want a little bit of surface here at the front. We're then going to tab into edit mode, and hovering over one of these edges, we're going to go Control R or Command R. You're going to see this yellow line appears. And if you roll your middle mouse button once, you can add in 2 segments like this, and then just double click, and we've added in those segments. Hit A to select everything, and then right click and click on Subdivide. Come to the level of subdivision here, and let's make it 22. And that should be it. So let's tab out. And because we're going to be adding a modifier, a displace modifier to this, we need to apply the scale because we've scaled it over here, as you can see in our transform vectors. So we're going to go Control A, and we're going to come and apply the scale like so. And now that we've done that, we can come here to our modifiers, add a subdivision surface modifier, and then we're going to come on top of that, add a displace. And then we need to come over here to our texture properties, click on New, come to the type, and let's make it cloud. And we're going to leave it at that. So let's come over to our modifiers again and just close these 2 stacks here. And then we're going to add another subdivision surface modifier. Go to object mode and enable shade smooth. So now we have this and it's looking great, but we just need to come here to the displace and just come to the strength. And let's make the strength 0.15. And that's looking about where we want it. So that's pretty cool. So it's not perfectly flat. You can always adjust it later if you feel it's needed, but let's just quickly tab in. And just for a bit of extra displacement, we're going to cheat and we're going to come up here to the proportional editing, make it active. And we're going to come to the drop down and we're going to set random. We're then going to select a random vertex at the back here. Roughly there should be fine. We're going to go G, Z, and we're going to move it up, and we're going to roll our middle mouse button to increase the fall off. And this is going to do a random distribution of the fall off, giving us this kind of spiky mountain kind of effect in the background. So we don't want to make it too high, but just something like that for a bit of, interesting background should be fine. Then tab out, and now we have our landscape made. So let's quickly add in the camera so we can start getting an idea of things here. So we're going to go into our front view. We're going to go Shift A. We're going to add in a camera. And let's come to our camera settings. And let's go to the focal length. We're going to make it 95 on the focal length. And we're going to go G, Y, and we're going to move the camera back to about here. Then we're going to go S, then we're going to go G, Z, and we're going to move it up just a little bit. Then with your camera active, hit 0 to go into camera view, and you should see this, which is all good, but we want to come here to our output settings. And for now, I'm just going to make the top resolution 900, and I'm going to leave the bottom at 1080p, which should be fine. So now we have this aspect ratio here. Later when you render it out, you can bump these settings up, or you can just change the percentage to something like 150 if you want a higher quality or higher pixel render. So with that done, let's just quickly pose our camera. So for me, I'm gonna bring the camera down a little bit closer to the ground, and then I'm gonna rotate it up by double tapping R, and I'm just gonna rotate it up a bit. Something like that. So we want this kind of low angled look. And then I'm gonna select the sphere. I'm gonna double tap R, and I'm just gonna rotate it kind of down till it's looking at about this point here, like that. So now we have that pose and it's looking really cool. You can kind of see it all coming together. And now we're gonna model a few more things around here, and they're really simple. Okay, so we're gonna try and model this sort of stuff, as you can see here. It's super easy to do. So we're gonna go Shift A, we're gonna add in a circle. We're gonna come here to our vertex count, and we're gonna make it 12, like so. Okay, so we have 12 verts in there. We're going to tab into edit mode, and with all of those selected, we're going to go E to extrude and Z, and we're going to extrude it up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hit A to select everything, disable the proportional editing, and then we're going to go E to extrude and then Alt S, and we're going to scale it out. Alt S and scale it out a little bit like that. Then you're going to hit A to select everything, right click, and then go subdivide, and make sure it's only subdivided once, then tab out. And now we're going to go over to our modifiers, add modifier, and we're going to give it a triangulate. And then on top of that, we're going to give it a wireframe. But with the wireframe, we're going to bring the thickness down quite a bit till we get this kind of, support structure looking thing happening here. We're going to go G, Z, move it up, and then S to scale it up. Make it whatever scale you like, but for me, something like this is fine. Go into your camera view, and it's at this point we can just double tap R with this guy selected and just rotate it in your view and pose it however you wish. I'm going to go with something like that. Looks absolutely fine to me. Maybe just rotate it down just a little bit more, maybe bring the whole thing down Just play around with it till you get something that you like. Shouldn't be intersecting with anything, but that looks pretty cool. And now the next thing is going to be to add in some of these cables, which are super simple. So let's start by actually adding in a curve. So we're going to go Shift A. We're going to go to our curves and add in a simple Bezier curve. And so we can see what we're doing for now. Let's just bring the curve up above the sphere. And let's give it something to use along the curve. So we're going to go Shift A. We're going to go to our mesh options, add in a circle again. And it should by default be low poly, so 12. So we're going to go G, X, and move it to the side. And we're going to come in here, and it's at this point we're going to go into edit mode. We're going to go Shift D. We're going to move another cable over, S to scale it down, Shift D, maybe move another sphere, and maybe duplicate it, add another one here. You know, something like that should be fine. Be as random as you want. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select that cable to be, and we're going to go to our settings here, our Bezier curve settings. Actually, before we do that, we just need to select these guys here. Hit F3. So select these circles here. Actually, before we do that, we just need to select these guys we made earlier, these circles. Hit F3 and then come up here and type convert, and then convert to curve. Now you can see if we tab in, they're a curve. And then we're going to select our Bezier curve again. We're going to come over here to our Bezier curves settings here, and we're going to go down to geometry. And we're going to go down to the bevel, click on object, click on the little eyedropper, and then select those circular objects. And we can see this is now what we have. So let's just select those circular objects, hit S to scale them down. And we're going to keep scaling them down till we get these guys here looking like some cables. Then we're going to go into our front view, and we're going to just move this Bezier curve behind here somewhere. And then we're going to select them. We're going to go into edit mode. And then we're just going to simply select the handle point here at the side, at the back. And we're going to go into our camera view, or you can do this however you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go G, and I'm going to move this handle up. And I'm going to go E to extrude it a bit and rotate it down. Right, so now I'm going to grab this handle at the end, and I can move that a little bit more in here. Grab this guy, and I can just kind of sag it around and see what it looks like. And try and get kind of like the sagging, kind of droopy cable effect going. Be as creative with it as you want. So I'm just going to go with something like that. Then I'm going to tab out, and I'm going to go Shift D to duplicate this cable. I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to rotate it up a little bit and kind of have it just tucking in behind there. And I'm going to go into edit mode, select that handle, and I'm going to move it back a bit more, just so it's tucking in the back there. We don't really need to do anything fancy or specific back there because it's actually not going to be seen by the camera. So go back to your front view, and then grab these handles here, and we just want to make this one look a little bit more saggy, like that. So in your camera view, you can kind of see this. At the moment, they're clustered together a little bit tight. So all we have to do is select our object that we're referencing, these little guys down here, go into edit mode, and I'm just going to grab them and space them apart a little bit more. Maybe scale one along the Y a little bit, make it look a little bit different. And you can see here, this is what the cables are looking like. In fact, let's just move this reference object up to the top here, move it a bit closer so we can just easily grab it and just edit it accordingly. So make it, change it a little bit. Just try and make the cables look the way you want them to look. Okay, so that's looking a bit better. So once we have that, we're going to grab the cables. We're going to go Shift D and duplicate another one, bring it down just a little bit. But this time we're going to grab this curve object that's being referenced. We're going to go Shift D, move one over to the side, go into edit mode, and then we're just going to delete some of these verts here. Just select them, and we're going to make a cable that we're going to space them a little bit more apart. And then with this new duplication we made, we're going to go over to our curve settings, and under the bevel, we're going to delete that original object, click on the eyedropper, and then select that new circular object. And in this one, we're going to go into edit mode, grab these handles, and we're going to bring them down a bit more. And we want these ones to be a little bit more droopy kind of cables, like hanging a bit more. And it's a little bit tricky, but just play around with it till you kind of have that droopy cable effect going. Just make it look as dynamic and natural as possible. So something like that. And what you can do is you can also grab these curve objects and just give them a subdivision surface modifier to smooth them out a little bit more as well. Okay, and now we can grab this droopy cable, Shift D to duplicate it, bring it down here, add another one behind here, go into edit mode, grab that handle, and kind of give a little bit more detail to the cables at the bottom here. So we just want these kind of loose looking cables laying here at the bottom, and just so it doesn't look all too perfect. We want it to look a little bit random, a little bit scattered or shoved all over the place. And what you can do now is you can grab these cables. So you can go Shift D to duplicate them, move them over to the other side, go into edit mode, select these handles, and just pose them. And this is one of those things where it really is just a matter of taking your time and trying out some different things. Don't copy exactly like I'm doing it. Like, try your own kind of style. Look at some actual reference images of some cables and try and just match something that looks kind of natural. So I'm just going to go with something like that for now. That looks pretty cool. So what we're going to just quickly do, we're going to select this object here. We're going to tab into edit mode, and we're going to go Shift Alt, just click on an edge here to loop select this inner edge. And then we're going to go Shift D to duplicate. We're going to move it down a bit, and then E to extrude that selection just down a bit. Control L to select the whole thing, and then hit P and go separate by selection, tab out, and then select this new object, and then get rid of the triangulate and get rid of the wireframe. So just something like that should be fine. In fact, just go into edit mode, just select the bottom edge, double G, and just slide it up a bit. We just want this thin rim here. You'll understand why we're going to be doing that in part 2. And it's just going to be like this light that goes around. We're going to add an emissive material, but just that little extra detail will come in handy later. So at the moment, I believe this is our scene. So in part 2, we're going to be making it look really awesome, adding some shaders to it, adding some cool lights, some atmospheric volume stuff, and doing some cool rendering. And I hope you guys are able to watch part 2, so go ahead and check that out. Thank you for watching.